We live in an era obsessed with the architecture of the self, treating the human psyche like a software probe in perpetual need of an upgrade. We are told that with no discipline and no willpower, we can optimize our internal experience and eliminate the glitches of anxiety. Yet, the more we strive to fix ourselves, the more fractured we feel, trapped in a hall of mirrors where the exit is merely a reflection of our own desperation. Now let us explore the profound wisdom found not in adding more, but in letting go. The journey begins in the familiar landscape of our daily lives, a terrain defined by a supple, humming background noise of insufficiency. This is the ordinary world for the modern seeker. We wake up and almost immediately the mechanism of judgment engages. There is a sense, sometimes sharp and sometimes dull, that this current state of mind, this current feeling in the body is not quite right. It needs adjustment. We look in the mirror, not just at our face, but at our souls, and we see a project to be mended. We tell our souls that if we could just meditate a little longer, read the new book on productivity, or master the art of positive thinking, we would finally arrive at that elusive shore of peace. We are all, in this sense, well-intentioned architecting to renovate a house while we are still living inside it, knocking down walls and tearing up floorboards, wondering why we never feel settled. This approach to psychological well-being is based on a fundamental assumption that goes largely unquestioned, the belief that there is a me who is the problem, and a me who is the solution. We assume that with Ford, the good version of ourselves can conquer the bad version, disapplying the mind of submission like a white animal. But let us pause and look closely at his dynamic. It is the foundation of the self-improvement trap. We are engaged in a game of mental gymnastics where we try to step outside of ourselves to correct ourselves. It is a noble struggle, or so it seems. We treat our anxiety, our overthinking, and our hesitation as foreign invaders that must be expelled. We create a split in our own consciousness. On one side stands the judge, the part of us that reads the philosophy books, holds the idols, and demands perfection. On the other side stands the victim, the part of yes, the feel, the fear, the laziness, or the confusion. The judge looks down at the victim with disdain, cracking the whip of willpower. Be better, it comments. Stop worrying. Be present. And for a moment, perhaps, we straighten our backs and clear our minds. We feel a surge of control. But inevitably, the energy fades, the old habits return, and the judge returns with a harsher sentence. The cycle repeats endlessly. We call this working on ourselves, but in reality, it is a civil war. And like any war, it leaves the landscape of the mind scarred and exhausted. This is the great paradox of the broken fixer. The entity that is trying to fix the problem is, in a very deep sense, the problem itself. When we say, I want to stop overthinking, we must ask, who is the I that wants to stop? Is it not a thought? Is the desire to silence the mind not itself a noise? We are attempting to use the mind to beat the mind into silence. It is like trying to smooth our water with a flattering. The very action of smoothing creates more disturbance. It is like a thief dressing up as a policeman to catch the thief. As long as thief is running the investigation, the chase will go on forever, because the thief will never catch himself. In this ordinary world of struggle, we are caught in a loop of feedback that reinforces the very anxiety we wish to escape. We feel anxious, and then we become anxious about being anxious. We judge ourselves for judging ourselves. We scrutinize our thought, looking for the negative, on so we can weed them out, not realizing that scrutiny is the tension. The more we obsess over our mental state, the more rigid it becomes. A mind watched by a strict internal supervisor cannot flow, it stammers. Consider the sheer energy this requires. It is an immense strain on the vital force of life. To maintain this split, to constantly monitor oneself, to stand guard at the door of consciousness, checking the credentials of every rising thought, is exhausting. It leads to a specific kind of spiritual failure that is rampant in our time. It is not the failure physical labor, which can be satisfying and conductive to sleep. It is the failure of holding a pose. It is the tension of a muscle that is never allowed to relax because it believes that if it lets go, everything will collapse. We are conditioned to believe that this tension is necessary. We are taught that without this internal pressure, we would become stagnant, lazy, or childish. The cultural narrative reinforces the idea of life as a linear climb up a mountain. If you are not climbing, you are falling. So we climb. We grasp at techniques and methodologies. We turn spirituality into another form of ambition. We try to be good at meditation. We try to be successful at mindfulness. We bring the same egoic drive that we use in the marketplace into the sanctuary of our own hearts, expecting to turn a profit of peace. But peace is not a commodity to be acquired, and the self is not a mechanism to be faced. The struggle we feel is not because we haven't found the right technique yet. The struggle is the result of the search itself. We are like a person frantically running around looking for the necklace that is already around the neck. The faster we run, the more breathless we become, and the less likely we are to notice the gentle weight resting against our skin. We are trying to lift ourselves up by our shoelaces. It is a physical and metaphysical impossibility. The ego, which is essentially a bundle of memories, ideas, and conditioned responses, cannot transform itself. It can only rearrange its furniture. It can change the drapes, paint the walls, and hide the clutter in the closet, but it is still the same house. The eye that wants to be better is made of the same substance as the eye that is flawed. They are two sides of the same coin, spinning in the air. As we stand here in this first act of our journey, we must acknowledge the futility of this approach. We must allow ourselves to feel the frustration of it while immediately trying to fix the frustration. This is the crucial first step, admitting that our strategy for control have failed, not because we didn't try enough, but because they were muffed from the start. The tool we are using to dig ourselves out of the hole is to shovel the bucket. We are trapped in a labyrinth of our own making, and every turn we take to find the exit only adds another corridor to the maze. The walls are built of our resistance to what is. The ceiling is painted with our expectations of what should be. And we are running breathless, chasing a phantom future where we are finally fixed. But this future never arrives because the horizon moves as we move. The better me is always one day away. This is the plight of the modern mind. We are sophisticated, educated, analyzed, yet we are strangled by our own good intentions. We have become experts in the diagnosis of our own flaws, yet the cure remains out of reach. Why? Because we are trying to cure the self with the self. We are trying to bite our own teeth. We are trying to see our own eyes without a mirror. And so, the hero stands at the precipice of a realization. They all waste the ways of force, of will, of constant self-correction have led only to exhaustion. The ordinary world of self-improvement has revealed itself to be a treadmill. To move forward, we must stop running. We must prepare to encounter a different kind of wisdom, one that does not ask us to do more, but challenges the very existence of the door. We must look at the nature of the trap itself. We have established the nature of our exhaustion, but to find the exit, we must go deeper into the machinery of this trap. We must become like curious engineers, opening the hood of the human mind to engineer the engine that generates so much smoke and heat. What we find there is a mechanism based on a fundamental illusion, a trick of light and mirrors that we have mistaken for reality for most of our lives. This illusion is the loop of the split mind. In our everyday language, and indeed in our internal monologue, we operate under the assumption that there are two distinct entities within us. We say, I need to control myself, or I am ashamed of myself, or I must improve myself. Notice the grammar. Here is a subject, I, and an object, myself. We perceive the I as the pilot, the captain, the rational agent located somewhere behind the A's, holding the steering wheel. We perceive the myself as the vessel, the unruly passenger, or the turbulent weather that needs to be navigated. We believe that the pilot can step outside the vessel to fix it. We believe the I is independent of the myself. But let us ask this angrious question, where exactly is division? If you look inward hard searching for the line that separates the controller from the controlled, can you find it? Or so you simply find a continuous stream of thoughts, feelings, and senses, and one following the other like river. The truth begins to dawn on us is that the I who wants to improv is merely another thought. The I who says, I must stop being anxious, is actually a reaction to the anxiety. It is not separate from the anxiety. It is the next beat of the anxiety. Imagine a turbulent pool of water. The water is raw and choppy. Now, imagine a wave rising up and looking at the rest of the pool, sighing, this is too chaotic. I must make the water flat. And so, wave crashes down upon the surface, trying to beat the other waves into submission. What happens? The impact creates more turbulence. The effort to smooth the water is a sofa disturbance. He sees the perfect image of the ego trying to conquer the mind. The ego is a wave in the ocean of the mind, yet it pretends to be the ocean's master. This creates what we might call a cybernetic bind or a feedback loop. In audio engineering, if you place a microphone too close to a speaker that is playing the microphone's output, you get a screech, a feedback loop. The system is trying to attend to itself. Anxiety and overthinking are the psychological equivalents of that screech. When we feel a bad emotion, let's say, fear, the split mind immediately engages. The judge identifies the fear that myself as a threat. The judge exerts pressure to remove the fear. Don't be afraid, it says. But this command is tension. Now we have the original fear, plus the tension of trying to suppress it. The system detects this new tension, interprets it as more instability, and redables the effort to control it. The microphone gets closer to the speaker. The screech gets louder. We enter a state of oscillation, vibrating with the energy of outrun resistance. We spend years, sometimes decades, in this oscillation. We read books that give us new strategies for the judge to use against the victim. We learn to reframe, to visualize, to affirm. But often, we are simply zipping the teeth a new disguise. We arming the rival war with more sophisticated weapons. The spiritual ego is perhaps the trickiest disguise of all. It learns to speak the language of peace and acceptance, but it uses them as tactics for conquest. It says, I will accept this moment so that the pain will go away. Oh, so you see the trap? The so that is the giveaway. It is a bargain. It is not true acceptance, it is a business deal. We are still trying to manipulate reality, just more subtly. We are holding our breath, waiting for the result we want, and when the piece doesn't arrive on our schedule, we get frustrated. I accepted it. We scream internally. We am I still anxious? Because the one who is accepting is still the one who wants to escape. This brings us to the most uncomfortable realization of our journey, the futility of the will in the realm of the psyche. In the external world, the will is a magnificent tool. If you want to move a brick from here to there, you apply effort, and the brick moves. The relationship is linear, effort equals result. But the internal world operates on the law of reversed effort. This is the principle that implies that in certain realms, the harder you try, the less you succeed. If you try to force yourself to fall asleep, you become wide awake. If you try to force yourself to be spontaneous, you become rigid. If you try to force yourself to forget a painful memory, you etch it deeper into your neural pathways. And if you try to force a new self to be happy or improved, you reinforce the underlying belief that you are currently miserable and broken. The fixer cannot fix this because the fixer is the mechanism, the problem. The ego is defined by its boundaries, by its separation from the rest of the world. It tries on problems because problems give it a job to do. If there were no problems to solve, if you were suddenly perfectly at peace and content with reality, exactly as what would happen to the ego? What would happen to that buzzy, chattering manager in your head? It would be out of work. It would dissolve. Therefore, subconsciously, the ego must maintain the struggle. It is secretly in love with the drama of self-improvement. It loves the hunt. It loves the narrative of the hero's journey, where it battles demons and overcomes obstacles. But in this internal context, the demons are its own shadows, and the battle is a farce. Let us look deeper at this shadow play. We are trying to outsmart our own nature. We possess a biological and psychological system that has evolved over millions of years to alert us to anger and to seek safety. When system produces anxiety, it is doing its job. But the modern mind, the split mind, interprets this biological cycle as a character flaw. We pathologize the human condition. We treat the mind as if it were a machine separate from nature. A machine can be repied by a mechanic. If the gears are grinding, you replace the gear. But the mind is not a machine, it is an organism. It is a process. It is growing, flowing, and changing like a cloud or a tree. You cannot fix a cloud that is the wrong shape. You cannot discipline a tree into growing faster by pulling on its branches. Yet we pull. We pull on our own branches day and night. We analyze our past, dissect our traumas, and categorize our neurons. If we have enough data, we can engineer a better human. We treat the present moment as a stepping stone to a better future moment. We are never here. We are always on our way to there. And this destination of the perfectly optimized self isn't that reason that resist we approach it. Because the criteria for perfection are created by the same mind feels imperfect. As we grow and learn, our standards rise, and the gap between where we are and where we think we should be remains constant. The donkey chased the carrot dangling from the stick strapped to its own back. The donkey runs faster, the stick moves faster. The distance is absolute. This realization is the trial of our journey. It is a painful, disorienting moment. It feels like hitting a wall. We realize that our toolbox is empty. We realize that I cannot save me. We realize that the very energy we have been pouring into our salvation has been fueling our suffering. We are left with a split mind that is frantically spinning its wheels, generating heat but no motion. We are the snake eating its own tail, the Ouroboros believing that if we just eat fast enough, we will finally be full. But we are only consuming ourselves. The struggle, then, is not against the anxiety, the depression, or the bad habits. The struggle is against the illusion that we can control these things through force. The struggle is the tension of the split. As long as we believe we are to the good on and the bad on, the policeman and the criminal, we are doomed to perpetual conflict. We must sit with this futility. We must allow the weight of it to settle upon us. This is not a cynical resignation, it is a necessary disillusionment. We are stripping away the false hope that the ego can engineer its own enlightenment. We are watching the mechanic admit that he ought know how to fix the engine because he is the engine. The mind is a stream of happening. Thoughts arise, emotions rise, sensations rise. They come and they go. But the split mind grabs onto them, labels them, or tries to keep them. This is a good thought, I must keep it. This is a bad feeling, I must kill it. This clutching and pushing is the root of our unease. It is the refusal to flow. If we look closely at the moments of our lives where we actually felt peace, where we actually felt improved or at ease, was it the result of a brutal internal struggle? Was it the result of the judge finally whipping the victim U-shape? Or did those moments happen when we forgot ourselves? Did they happen we were so absorbed in a sunset, a piece of music, or a task, the E simply dropped away? In those moments of flow, there was no splitman. There was no I watching me. There was just the doing, just the seeing, just the being. The loop was broken not by force, but by absence. The feedback squeak stopped because the microphone was moved away from the speaker. But how's a we so then? How's a we summon that state of unity when we are in the grip of neurosis? The instant we try to weigh it, we are back in the trap. I must forgive myself so I can be peaceful. The I is Mac. The thief has put on the robes of the monk. This is the ultimate bint. We cannot will ourselves to be willless. We cannot treat an eye. It seems we are checkmated by our own consciousness. The walls of the labyrinth are closing in. And it is exactly here, in this tight, breathless space where all strategies have failed, that the possibility of a breakthrough exists. It is only when the fixer admits total defeat, when the hands are thrown up in the air not in laziness but in the realization of impossibility, the true nature of the mind can reveal itself. We have deconstructed the machine and found that the gears are grinding against nothing. We have exposed to I as a phantom manager in an empty office. The struggle has been real, but the enemy was never there. We were fighting our own reflection in the mirror, punching the glass until our knuckles bled, convinced the our man was hitting back. Now, with the illusion of the split mind exposed, we stand on the threshold of the return. If we cannot fix ourselves, what is left? If the war is a wax, what happens to the soldier? We are ready to see what lies on the other side of the effort. We are ready to explore the frightening and liberating truth of what happens when we simply stop. So what remains when the architect puts down the blueprint and the mechanic puts down the wrench? What happens when we realize that to really trying to fix the mind is simply an fluctuation of the mind? We arrive at the gate of radical acceptance. But we must be very careful here, for words are tricky. When we hear acceptance, we usually think of resignation, of gritting our teeth and enduring a bad situation, or of a passive laziness where we simply stop caring. This is not the acceptance we speak of. This is not the acceptance of a defeated soldier. It is the acceptance of the ocean receiving the rain. True liberation begins the moment we stop trying to be different from what we are. It sounds angers, doesn't it? The ego screams, if I stop trying to chance, I will be angry and answers fervor. But the paradox, the great cosmic shock is that change only becomes possible when we stop forcing it. Consider the muddy water. If you want to clear a pool of muddy water, what must you do? If you plunge your hands into try to push the dirt down or scoop the clear water up, you only stir the mud further. The more you interfere, the clouder it gets. The only way to clear the water is to leave it alone. You must trust the gravity of nature. The mud will settle on its own, and the water will become clear. But it will only do so if you cease your agitation. This leaving it alone is not an act of doing something, it is the cessation of the interference. It is the collapse of the split mind. We'll stop standing apart from our experience as judges and simply become the experience itself. When anxiety arises, instead of saying, I must not be anxious, we simply notice, here is anxiety. Ways are not invited in for tea, nor do we slam the door in its face. We simply acknowledge its presence. We feel the texture of it, the tightness in the chest, the racing toss without adding the secondary layer of this shouldn't be happening. When we remove the should, we remove the tension. And we remove the tension, something miraculous happens, the emotion creates a curve. It rises, it peaks, and because there is no wall of resistance for it to bounce off of, it passes. It flows through us like a one through an open window. It is only when we close the window when we resist it, the wind bangs against a glass and threatens to shatter the house. This is the shift from facing to witnessing. We move from identifying with the weather to identifying with the sky. The weather is constantly changing: storms, sunshine, fog, rain. If you think you are the weather, you are in constant turmoil. You are devastated by the storm and desperate to hold onto the sun. But if you really are the sky, you can hold it all. The storm does not hurt the sky. The clouds do not stain the blue. You are the vast, spacious awareness in which these thoughts and feelings occur. From this vantage point, the self-improvement project looks very different. We see that we were trying to polish a cloud. We see that the flaws we were finding were often just transient states of energy. And we discover that the better self we were chasing is not a future destination, but the present capacity to be aware. This is where the return of our journey takes place. We return to the ordinary world, but our perception is transformed. We still have thoughts. We still have emotions. The laundry still needs to be done, and the bills still need to be paid. But the heavy, grinding friction of the internal war has ceased. We no longer walk around with a clipboard, grading our own performance. If we feel lazy, we feel lazy. We don't add a layer of guilt on top of it. And strangely, when we fully allow ourselves to feel lazy without judgment, the energy often shifts naturally into willy into. When we stop wasting mind of our energy fighting ourselves, we have energy available for living. This is the principle of Wu Wei, our effortless action. It is not that we are nothing, it is that we are nothing against the grain of reality. We move with the current, not against it. We improve not by adding more complications, but by subtracting the illusions, the judgments, and the desperate need to be someone else. The trap of the ego is the belief that you are a broken object that needs repair. The truth of the spirit is that you are an unfolding process that needs to be life. A flower does not try to bloom, it just blooms. A river does not try to flow, it follows the path of least resistance. You are nature, too. You have the same intelligence within you that spins the galaxies and grows the forest. You do not need to micromanage your own evolution. You need to get out of your own way. So the next time you find yourself caught in the loop of overthinking trying to fix your mind with your mind, remember the muddy water. Pull your hands out. Step back. Watch the mud swirl. Don't touch it. Breathe. Wait. You will find the peace you were violently chasing waiting for you in the very stillness you were afraid to trust. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be experienced. And in this realization, fixer dissolves, and finally, there is just life. Now, as the screen fades and the silence returns, let us sit for a moment with this simple possibility. Perhaps there is nothing to fix. Perhaps the only thing standing between you and the peace you seek is the belief that you are not already there. Close your eyes. Let the waiter settle. And simply be.